Hey everybody, welcome back to our special broadcast of local elections 2018. Today we've got with us City Council member and mayoral candidate Greg Lucero.
Hello, Joseph.
Hey, how's it going? Before we get started, I want to welcome everybody from Nogales School District and District 35 in Rio Rico. Welcome back to school. My own son, he's starting second grade tomorrow, and I'm pretty excited about that. He's a little bit nervous, not as excited as I am.
Nervous excitement, huh?
Yeah, but I got to admit, having him at home for the whole summer, it's good for the first month, and then it's all right for the second month, and then for the third month, it starts to. He can't wait for school to start again.
It's like having a newborn, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's great when you first bring them home, but after a month, you kind of like, can we put them away and bring them out when we want to play with them?
Exactly. So let's talk about your candidacy. First, let's start with your history. Your history within the community, Nogales, Arizona mining, all of it.
My entire history in 10 seconds or less. Born native Arizonan, went to school entirely in Arizona, got my degree from University of Arizona, was working on my master's in public administration and decided to go into gainful employment and have worked at probably every level of government in the state of Arizona. Worked for Tucson City Council, worked for Pima County Transportation, worked for Governor Bruce Babbitt, ended up being his special assistant in charge of the Southern Arizona office, worked for Senator DeConcini, had several interns that worked for me that all came back to Nogales. Kerry Grimm was one of my interns. Nacho Barraza was an intern of mine. Left working for politicians and got a job for the city of Douglas doing community development. Worked my way up to being a deputy city manager and left Douglas, went to Parker, Arizona, worked as the city manager in Parker, left there and became a regional manager for a civil engineering firm that covered all of the western United States. Left there and came down to Santa Cruz County. My wife is a native of Nogales and wanted to be closer to family. We had just had a newborn son and wanted to raise him in a bicultural environment. So this was home for us and moved here. I think it was in 2000, so I've been here 18 years. Worked as a Santa Cruz County manager for almost 10 years and then began working for Wildcat Silver, which became Arizona Mining, which now is South 32.
Oh, so it's not Arizona mining anymore either?
No, it was just last week. It was purchased by an Australian multi-billion-dollar mining company that is going to be its first venture into the North American continent. So it's a big project for them. They spent a couple $2 billion to purchase us, so they have the resources to see this project through the next 50 plus years, and they're excited about the opportunities that this project presents for this area.
Okay. Now, one thing that we'll touch on the project just a little bit because is there any conflict of interest if you were to be elected? I mean, it's not in the city of Nogales, so.
I see it quite the opposite. Here's an opportunity where you've got a multi-billion-dollar business right next door that is going to be making significant investment in the region. I would hope that you would want to have a good relationship with that corporation, because if I have the ability to influence where they spend their dollars, I'm going to certainly encourage them to spend them in Nogales as opposed to the city of Tucson.
Of course, absolutely. Now, so you've been on the city council for the last 4 years, right?
Yeah, it'll be 4 years at the end of this calendar
it's almost
year.
4 years. And what made you decide to run for city council in the first place?
Because of all the past government experience that I mentioned, I felt that I had the experience and knowledge to contribute to the community. It's certainly not for the pay, so it for all intents and purposes, it's a volunteer job. But I have a lot of knowledge, and I felt that I could help the community.
All right, good answer, good answer. Now, what have you done? What do you think that you've been able to accomplish over the last 4 years as city council?
I think the most difficult challenge that we've had and we still struggle with is trying to get the council to act united. There's been too much backbiting, infighting, personal attacks, and I think finally, ever since I got on the council, I was trying to get us to have a simple planning retreat so we can all agree on a mission statement, goals and objectives to support that. And finally, for the first time in 3 years, we just had that this past summer, and we now have an idea of a mission of what we want to accomplish as members of city government, and are trying to set goals and objectives to move the city forward. So we're starting to become a little congeal and have a vision, I guess, is the best way to put it. So I think that's probably our most significant effort to date.
Well, that's good news. That's really good news, because, I mean, if anybody who's read the International over the last few years has noticed controversy at City Hall, tensions, conflicts. And I'm glad that you brought up the city council, because I think it's important for the city council to be unified towards a common goal, towards a common plan that benefits the city. Mm-hmm. Do you have any plans to unify the city council?
Absolutely. I mean, during our forum with Meet the Candidates the other night, a couple of weeks ago, or whenever it was, that the question was asked about, how can the city work with the county, with bad relationships, and my response was, it's not really bad relationships. It's just that the elected representatives are very passionate about what they believe in, and that's, I think, one of the biggest issues that we have to contend with. We're very passionate about the issues that we want to address and how we want to go about resolving whatever the problems or the issues are. But at the end of the day, the effort's got to be made that we've got to be united in how we move forward. We may disagree on how we're going to resolve it, but once the vote is taken, we all need to be on the same page. And I think we also need to understand that we are the ambassadors, the main marketers for the city of Nogales, and if we're making personal attacks and making negative comments about each other or businesses or other governments, all we're doing is a disservice to the people of Nogales, because we're not doing our job in providing the most positive image of the city.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the image of the city is something that I take very personally and very seriously. And I've asked all the other candidates this so far, and I plan to ask Doyle on Thursday, is there's this attitude around that a lot of people of the city of Nogales have, and it's this, oh, well, that's just the way Nogales is. Oh, that's how Nogales always is and always will be. Así es Nogales. Mm-hmm. That's what they say. I've even written on the subject. It bothers me that much when people say this. Do you have any plans to change that mindset?
Yeah, it's complacency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you change that attitude or that perception? And it's very frustrating for me when I go to a conference or I go to an event, and we look at other cities, and City of Tucson will have a table with their name on it. City of Phoenix will have their table established, and if the entire mayor and council show up to an event and there's not even a place for us to sit, we kind of look at each other and say, why don't we get the respect?
Absolutely.
Well, and you sort of answered it, Joseph, is if we act the way we act, how can we command respect? And a lot of it's got to change with the way we behave internally. And we've got to change the culture of city government. City services need to treat the clients, the citizens of the community with respect. They need to be part of our decision-making process. For too long, we make decisions in a vacuum. We don't involve the community in the decision-making process.
When the city actually works for
exactly.
the citizens.
So how do we change things around? We've got to really look at the city as providing a service. The customers are the citizens of the community. We need to engage them in how we move things forward. When we talk about, hey, we need to do an economic development plan, the city is the worst formed to come up with an economic development plan. We should be engaging business and industry. We should be engaging citizens in the community to come up with a plan that everyone benefits from. So a lot of what I see in the future is being more transparent, working with business and industry, working with other governments in the area, and above all, working with the citizens.
Okay, now you said working with business and things like that. The produce industry, I mean, it is a solid industry in the city of Nogales and Santa Cruz County. Has a strong history here. It's important to the city. I'm not saying that it's the only part of the city that matters, but it is important. Have you worked with the produce industry in the past, and do you have any plans to?
And that's probably one of the biggest things that I want to focus on, not specifically the produce industry, but trade in general.
Okay.
If Nogales was founded on trade because of its location on the
Absolutely.
border, why aren't we looking at truly becoming the most innovative port in the United States? Why aren't we working with Nogales, Sonora? Why aren't we working with the federal agencies on both sides of the border? Why aren't we working with the University of Arizona, or if not the U of A, ASU, to come up with what can we do to make our port as seamless as possible, where other businesses and industries look at, man, look at what Nogales is doing. We ought to locate our business there because they're moving goods and services through that port of entry like no one else. Why aren't we doing that? And what I would like to do is collaboratively work with all the aforementioned groups and say, what can we do to shake things up? Let's think outside the box. Let's look at technology. What can we do to make this border seamless, and then encourage other business and industry to locate in our community? The outfall is you're going to see business and industry start to locate in Nogales, Sonora, Nogales, Arizona.
Of course.
And you're going to see all other ancillary support, logistical services come here as well.
Now, staying on the subject of business, downtown.
Yes.
The downtown district, it's seen better days. I mean, to put it mildly.
If you look at all downtown businesses, they were all founded on a retail kind of anchor. Retail industry today has changed. I mean, the internet has had a significant impact on how retail is managed. Big box stores have had a big impact on the small mom and pop retail stores.
For decades, that's been going on.
And you start to look across the U.S., and all downtown businesses have had to reinvent themselves. What I see for our downtown business is we need to look at creating draws that will get people to come down, but there's got to be some sort of business or support service that is going to keep people in the area. I think we need to partner with Nogales, Sonora, because their downtown business community is also suffering. How can we partner together and create a draw where we can get tourists and people to come into our downtown area? Typically you look at arts, creating sculptures, murals, and maybe identify some renowned artists that are in the area or that have come from our community, and get them to do art that is on both sides of the border, so you can get people going to both sides of the border. Music, same thing. Look at artists that have come from our area, or aspiring artists, get them to start playing in the downtown area. Theater, you can look at that venue as well, again, on both sides of the border. So start creating that draw where both communities can take advantage and create this symbiotic relationship where, again, make the border as seamless as possible, get people to come down to the downtown area and reinvent itself.
Ambos Nogales, right? I mean,
exactly.
It's as a lot of people say, it's really one city with a wall right in the middle.
Correct. We've got to get rid of that wall.
Yeah, right. without going into too much detail about that, or getting,
Well, but that does bring up another issue. Is what is happening at a national and global level is going to have a significant impact on our community.
Absolutely. I mean, it already has with the North American Free Trade Agreement, the renegotiations.
Absolutely. So I mentioned to you earlier that I'd met with some of the union reps in the last few days. And of course, everyone wants to address salaries and compensation and those kinds of issues.
Of course.
And the big concern is we need to start paying attention to what's happening at a global level, because it's going to impact the market here locally.
Absolutely,
the peso devaluation is not moving in the right direction. So, the peso is important to our economy.
Absolutely, it is, definitely.
And so shopping in Nogales, Arizona is very important to us. And if the influx of shoppers drops because the peso doesn't have the value that it is holding right now and it continues to go down, it's going to have an impact on our revenue stream. The city of Nogales is completely dependent on sales tax revenue. And we got to look at other ways to create revenue streams to support local government.
Okay, now I got a couple of more things I want to ask about the economics of Nogales.
Sure.
And one is Mariposa.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a rise and fall of businesses for a long time. I mean, since even before the 2008 economic crisis, businesses were coming and going. I mean, it got worse after. But, I mean, we just had Hobby Lobby open up, was it last week?
Yes.
And we've got a Marshall's coming in, where both of them where Kmart used to be. So that's another example of a company, a business that had been there for decades, replaced by two, pretty large
Yes.
companies. And do you see any comparison between what the fall of downtown and the rise of Mariposa?
I think my personal view is you're an aspiring business person, correct, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely.
You tell me, if you're a business person here in the city of Nogales, what is the city's economic development plan?
As far as I know, there isn't one.
Shouldn't you, as a local businessman, be fully aware of what the city is doing to help and promote local business people?
Absolutely.
And that is the rub. These businesses that open up and close, they have, city is not engaged in what happened to them. Why did they close up? Was it, something that we could have done differently to help sustain them? When a business comes in, do we meet with them to see what it was that caused them to open up and make sure that whatever those numbers are that they relied on are going to continue to bear fruit? And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we have is we've talked about joining forces with Santa Cruz County and creating a true economic development program. And I think that is what is sorely lacking is everyone talks about economic development, and I'll borrow a phrase from a gentleman that shared it with me is everyone thinks that we're just going to come up with this fairy dust and sprinkle it over the city of Nogales and poof, businesses are going to arrive and businesses are going to start closing their shop. It's going to take effort for us as a government to reach out to Santa Cruz County and vice versa to say, hey, what we do together is going to benefit the business community. But we can't do it in a vacuum. We have to sit down with business leaders in the community and say, okay, folks, we're on the same team. How do we implement a plan that's going to help sustain your business and also help attract other businesses that are going to create better opportunities for the people in our community?
Of course. Now, does the annex fit into your plans?
No.
No? Okay.
Not currently. And I say that because we got to get our house in order first.
Okay.
If the revenue stream that we are utilizing right now can't take care of our existing infrastructure, what good is it going to do for us to take on an additional expansion when we can't take care of what we have? It goes back to what we talked about earlier is respect. Until we figure out how to take care of our streets, how to provide better garbage service, how to take care of our water and sewer system, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to go out and try to expand and take on an additional burden. Let's clean up what we have. Let's figure out how to pave our streets and take care of our streets. Let's figure out how to provide quality garbage service. And then we can say, hey, you know what? Let's expand the city boundaries and look at that additional population.
Okay. Now one thing that, since you mentioned, in revenue is with the water, the prices on people's water bills. I mean, it's been a little bit of a controversy lately. Do you have any words on that, or what you plan to do with that, or how you plan to raise these funds?
No, and the water's a perfect example. A firm was hired before I got on council. They looked at the city's infrastructure and the cost to start upgrading the water delivery system. And right away, the revenue stream wasn't paying for itself. So they said, look, let's come up with a schedule on how we're going to raise the rates over a period of 3 years. We had several meetings at the city council. We did everything possible to inform the public. In fact, at the last meeting, I was the only one that advocated for phasing it out over a longer period of time, because they went with the most aggressive way to implement
Shock the people.
Well, and I said, I guarantee you that once people get their water bills, they're going to say, holy shiitake mushrooms, this is what is going on at City Hall. And the fact of the matter is we still don't have the revenue stream to cover what needs to be done. City manager came to the city council last week and said he's going to be looking at a bond package to do major improvements to a lot of the water mains in the city, and he's looking at $12 to $15 million bond package, and that's going to be a secondary tax on the property owners. That's going to be a voter initiative. I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, but when you look at financing like that, a bank or lending institution is going to look at your track record and your ability to pay your debt. And right now, if we're not covering our nut to keep the water system operational, that's a hard sell to get financing.
Absolutely. Okay, now I want to take a step back, but before we do that, do we have any comments from anybody, Edgardo?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Now I'm going to take a step back to when we were talking about city council. And there was a question that was asked at the forum about the separation of church and state and prayer in city council meetings. And I agreed with your response in that situation. I mean, in that if you open the door for one religion or for one faith, one belief, one creed to...
It opens the door for everybody.
Well, you have to, and it's a democracy. You have to be able to. You have to open the door for everybody.
And that was the point being that City of Phoenix had undertaken a policy of doing prayer before city council meetings, and then lo and behold, a satanic cult said, "Hey, we want to lead prayer service," and it was. You can imagine the controversy it resulted, but at the end of the day, legally, they had to allow a satanic cult to actually lead prayer before a city council meeting. Needless to say, it was shortly thereafter discontinued. So, and that's sort of the risk that you run. I said I really don't have an issue whether we have prayer or not before a city council meeting, but if you do, be prepared to deal with the consequences.
Yeah,
so.
and I mean, it is a religious community. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's strongly Catholic, but there are other Christian religions as well. So that could ruffle some feathers, I imagine.
Yeah, and absolutely. Can you imagine if some satanic cult showed up and said, okay, and we want to lead prayer now for X number of minutes, and right now we don't even have a time frame on how long a prayer can last before a particular council meeting, and some have been very lengthy. So
is that right?
Yeah,
it would be
absolutely.
Right.
So be careful what you wish for.
Okay, now Edgardo, how are you on time? All right, so I'm going to allow you to make a statement to the people of Nogales. I mean, why they should vote for you and what your plans are for the future.
Well, probably the first thing I want to say is why I'm running. I think Nogales has so much potential, and what I want to bring to the city is real change that's going to have an impactful influence on why people want to be in Nogales. You want to create a community that's going to allow you to raise a family, have a good paying job, and give you the opportunity to have your kids succeed in life. I brought this up at the forum where, what is our number one export? And I asked Jaime Chamberlain, who's in the custom brokerage business, and he kind of looked at me kind of shocked, and he didn't know what to say. And the answer is our children. If we don't give opportunities for our children, that is our number one export. And at the end of the day, our legacy is what we have left behind for our kids. And if you look at what's happening with City of Nogales, city government, if we're not doing all that we can to provide a good foundation for families, we're doing a disservice to our kids. So, at the forum, it was set up where I had the two current mayor and the former mayor to my right, and me and the other candidate to my left. And it's, if you think things are great and have been great for the last 8 years, then vote for the incumbent or the previous incumbent, because you'll get more of the same. But if you want true change, then you've got two choices that haven't been mayor. So it's myself or Mike Melendez. And personally, I think I'm the better of the two choices on that area. So I think I've got a ton of experience. I've got an unlimited number of resources and connections at every level of government, from Nogales to Phoenix to Washington D.C. So I think I am poised to lead the city in the right direction if the electorate will vote to have me in that position.
All right. Well, the primaries are coming up, and it's almost make or break for mayor.
Yeah, it's August 28th, so get out there and vote. And
early voting is already open, so.
Yeah, yes, sir. I would appreciate anyone that votes for me, and I promise not to let you down.
All right. I really appreciate you coming out and talking to us.
Thank you, Joseph.
I want to talk to everybody real quick, let them know that tomorrow, on We Love Nogales con Santos Yescas, van a venir de Ciclovia y Cero Estrés, hablando de la ciclovía que va a ser el domingo, el 12 de agosto. Y también van unos del Consulado de México van a venir a hablar con el Santos. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you again on Thursday when John Doyle, our current mayor, the incumbent in the mayoral race, comes and gives us his ideas about what should happen in the future. Thank you.